Welcome to Sports Talk Law Talk. Today's date, October 15th, 2020. We got a lot to talk about. Jody, how you doing, bud?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Well, we're separated again, right?
Yeah.
Which is, you know what? It's the right thing to do. We're going to get into some of these conversations about NFL and how they're dealing with COVID. And, I know everybody has their opinion about COVID, but I do think we're doing the smart thing, or you're doing the smart thing, I should say. You know, when anybody, especially the elderly, are exposed to this thing, there's no reason to fuck around with it. There just isn't. That there are people who have passed away from it. So I think doing anything else is just inviting a very dangerous thing. Even if you think, hey, I'm going to get through COVID, it's small, it's whatever, the symptoms aren't going to hurt me. Even if that's your mindset, why go through it if you don't have to, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where everybody's at, is kind of assuming what kind of risk are you willing to take, right? And we have, my parents are in our life every week. They're 70 plus. They've got underlying conditions. My wife has some family out of town that's sick, and it's like, what? People that get it never know how they get it. You just kind of end up with it. And then even if you're asymptomatic or mild, you can pass it on to how many, I'm so tired of trying to figure it all out. I'm just going to be a hermit the rest of my life.
Well, and you're right. I mean, you sit here and you try to think about what's right, and I don't think there is a what's right. I think it's situational, and it's obviously you limit your interaction with others. I mean, I don't know if there's any other way that's been tested and proven other than that.
Yeah, I mean, and you just have to assume the worst about everybody. You have to assume like everybody's infected at all times. And then there's just every human being you come into contact with is like a vector for disease. It's not good. We got to at some point, we're going to move past it, because I don't know about you, man, but the weirdest part about the whole thing for me is it's still like Russian roulette when people get this. There are healthy younger people dying, and then there's millions of healthy younger people that are barely affected by it. And we still don't have to have any rhyme or reason on when you get the flu, you get the flu. You're just sick. But with this, it can be anything from you don't know you have it to you're dead. And there's everything in between.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? You're a zero or a hero. And why screw around with that? Hey, if you're a zero and nothing happens to you and you're good, you're good. But if you're on the other end of it, it's bad, man.
Yeah.
It's bad news.
Yeah, for sure.
I made a mistake the other day. I was watching Netflix and I turned on Outbreak. Do you remember Morgan Freeman?
Oh, yeah.
With that little devilish monkey.
Yeah.
Man, that rang true. Obviously movies sensationalize stuff, and the hazmat outfits and everything hasn't happened. But man, it was like, you watch that movie back in the day and it never dawns on you that we might actually deal with something fairly similar. And, we still are. Regardless of what people think, we're still dealing with it.
When you watch movies or TV shows or anything now, and you see people gathering in restaurants normal, I get super bummed out. I'm like, oh, I would have never noticed a scene in a movie where they're just eating in a diner and it's a packed restaurant. And now I look at it and I'm like, holy shit, I haven't been to a restaurant in 7 months. This is crazy.
Well, and you know what? It's funny. I had a similar sort of observation as I was watching some old footage of a football game, and the stands were packed, right? Packed. That's something we haven't seen in a while, and it made me a little claustrophobic because now we're so used to having so much space around us because everybody social distances, and then everybody's more cautious about it. That it's going to be interesting once we get back into those situations with concerts, and is everybody going to be as acclimated to being elbow to elbow with people? It'll be interesting to see, man, because I was surprised. I saw the football stands. I was like, man, that doesn't look appealing to me.
You know what's hilarious? We're all going to be germophobic. We're all going to be hypochondriacs. And here's the thing. I really like not being sick. I have 2 little girls, and so in a normal year, they're bringing home colds and coughs and sniffles from school and play dates, and then I'm sick and I've got this sore throat and I've got 14 different viruses over the course of a year, which is great for your immune system. But I've really enjoyed not having to worry about being sick for 7 months. It's actually really nice. And now I don't know how to go back to it, being around people and being you're not going to kill me, but you're going to get me sick, and being sick sucks.
Yeah. Staying away from the dirty kids, right? That's one thing we've learned right now is hey, and you're right. Actually, it's funny. we tend to not observe the things that don't happen. But you're right. Like, I haven't been sick. And it's funny. I was talking to my wife. I don't know where you stand on flu shots, but we got a flu shot last year and I didn't get sick. Now, is it because of the flu shot? I don't know. And I know there's controversy tied to all that stuff, but I don't know. It worked for me. And I was stuck on Netflix, and I also watched The Social Dilemma.
Ooh.
So we were talking before. You've told me that's on your watch list, but you haven't watched it, right?
Correct. Yeah, we want to. We've heard a lot of good, like, people are like, you need to watch this, but I now kind of know that I'm going to be ashamed watching it. What did you think? What did you get out of it?
I was ashamed. So, like, the big thing about it that I think the big takeaway for me was we're a product, right? Like, if you're not paying for a service or a product, you're the product. And that's what we are, is I think and I looked at Instagram, Twitter, all these other social media platforms, hey, ways to keep up with your friends and find things and shop and stuff. But the way Instagram and Twitter and everybody makes money is by selling ads. So to sell those ads, they have to do everything within their power to ensure that you're fully engaged on that platform on old times, right? So what made me feel kind of like dumb and then maybe duped about it was everything that they've planned to do has worked on me, right? I've been the guy who I'm lying in bed and the phone lights up and I'm like, oh shit, man, maybe that's Brian with something super cool. So I grab the phone, or, you know, I'm with my wife watching a movie and I should just be engaged with that activity of watching the movie, and I pick up the phone and, you know, it talks about suicide rates of young women who get harassed. I mean, it's some sad stuff, but then there's also some stuff on there that makes you really, really rethink it. And what made me watch that was one of my friends had posted the other day that he was cutting the cords on everything. He was shutting down Instagram, social media. And I thought it was really interesting. So I messaged him and I was like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, I think me constantly being on social media has impeded my creativity, and it's caused me to not be present in the moment, which I totally agree with. So I encourage, like, listen, what I did is I did my own research, small steps. I found this little Pham phone, the size of a credit card. My eyes are bad as I'm getting older, so it's really hard for me to read things. So I know I'm not going to be on it, and I'm not going to put Instagram or anything on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to treat Instagram and everything else like a job. From 8 to 5, I'll have access to it. I'll have my regular phone and everything. But after 5, you know, and this was weird. When I started as a lawyer in 2005, smartphones didn't exist. No one expected you to get back to them right away because it wasn't instant communication. Now there's instant communication, so people expect that. And I think that causes us, at least for me within business, to be like, okay, I need to always be on. I need to always be on. The thing is, I've put that money and success above my own mental health and that of being present within my family moments and friend moments. So for me, I watched it, and the takeaway was I need to unplug more. I need to set an example for my family and be unplugged more. And I just need to do different things to ensure, because I think the thing, you know, you talk about like dopamine and all this other shit that happens to your brain when you're constantly engaged on a social media platform. And I can't even follow that like some psychiatrists can, but we're probably damaging ourselves in ways that we don't even understand or comprehend. So, yeah, like I'm going to do the best I can to be less connected.
The challenge, though, and you just talked about it, is like our entire world now is set up to be on a screen. I mean, even now we're doing this remotely. Everything's being done remotely. This will be on YouTube. We want people to watch. We want people to listen to the podcast. You want people to download your podcast. And it's like, how do you straddle the line of accomplishing your goals, participating in an economy that is full of massive opportunities? The reason people are creating content online is because there's so many people watching that it creates all those ad revenues that you talk about, but also kind of be a human being. You know, it's, dude, when you talk about being a lawyer in 2005, do you know how quickly our culture has changed? I mean, in terms of how we spend our time, what we're spending our time on. Like, I say this as a joke sometimes. This isn't necessarily like your smartphone, but you watch it on Netflix. I've watched things on Netflix. When I was growing up, if someone was to sit inside and say they spent a weekend watching 12 hours of TV, we'd be like, yo, man, you need some help. Like, that's fucked up. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Now it's like, oh, I binged this, I binged that. Like, consuming copious amounts of content is normal now. Like, if you watch 8 straight episodes on your smart TV or your iPad, that's totally normal. That's kind of fucked up. I mean, that
It is.
10 years ago, if you would have told me, like, dude, I watched 8 hours of TV over the weekend, I'd be like, Byron, dude, you're fucking pathetic. Like, you need to get out and live your life. And now you get rewarded for that.
Well, and that's exactly what those corporations wanted, right? They wanted you to be connected, and that's what they've done is they've successfully. I think it's like any addiction. I think it's like any addiction. We're addicted to not being bored. That's our addiction. So like if there's this slight boredom, right? Like a commercial, there's a little stop in the football game, whatever it is. You're at your daughter's volleyball game, and you're on it. And that's what they've wanted us to do. And at least for my mentality, whenever anybody wants me to do something, I tend to do the opposite because I'm stubborn.
Right.
So now that I know that this is exactly, and I should have known from day one, right? But now that I know, I'm like, fuck you guys. I'm going to show you. I'm going to make sure all your shit doesn't work on me and my family. And I hope my friends, I hope everybody, because it's weird. Last night, I didn't have the TV on. And all of a sudden I look up and it was 9:58. And I go to bed at 10 o'clock, man, like religion. And I said to Naomi, I go, isn't it funny? We didn't watch TV. We weren't on social media. And the nights went quickly by because we were talking to each other. Like, I almost felt like I was like my grandpa. Hey, fella, like you just got to sit down and have a good conversation. But honestly, I believe that that's what we're missing.
So 2 questions for you. One, are you someone that naturally do you like watch the documentary on how the meat is raised and like where your food comes from? Like, is that, because I feel like I actively avoid that. I like eating meat. I don't really want to know how the sausage is made. I just want to eat it. And I'm kind of at a place with social media where like I'm a radio host. So I'm on Twitter constantly following the news cycle. I feel like I've got to react. You talk about turning your laptop off and TV off at night. When the kids go to bed is when I prepare for the show the next morning. So then I'm on my laptop and it's like, I almost don't want to know because to disrupt it disrupts everything in my universe, right? Like how are you planning to manage to accomplish everything you have set forth to try to accomplish in your career and your life while also balancing?
Yeah, that's tough, man. That's tough. I'm not that guy though that you mentioned because what's that? Hey, Forrest, can you look up the Zac Efron documentary? There was just this Zac Efron documentary that was done, and it was really good. I forget the guy that was on it with him, but they traveled to different places to talk about.
Right?
Pardon me?
You watch all Zac Efron stuff, don't you? Just if it's Zac Efron's on, you're in.
Hey, man, I'll tell you. Hey, the kid is easy on the eyes, man. I'm happily married, but I will give the kid that. I mean, he is a good-looking kid. But it was interesting is like they went over how our water sucks. Down to Earth on Netflix. We got Social Dilemma, we got Down to Earth. Down to Earth was all about healthy eating, vegan, how food is sourced and how unhealthy a lot of food is that we eat because of the antibiotics and stuff in it. And listen, I didn't stop eating meat. I didn't take the steps necessary because I, like you, I love meat. And I love to eat. So there are things that I watch, even though I can recognize that as a society, we're probably not harvesting our food properly and sourcing it. And with we can get into all the antibiotics and how we see people, especially girls, develop differently now than we did, 20, 30 years ago. But with the social media thing, it's something that, I dealt with the first 21, 22 years of my life without social media, without a smartphone, without really on the internet. And so I really don't need it now. And I really do believe, the other thing about this show, The Social Dilemma, is they kind of have little skits in there, right? So they have like a little family they follow around, and the daughter deals with some bullying online because someone says she has big ears. And you just see this girl's heart sink, and those things, they can be easily stopped. You know what I mean? Like, look, you can get into the meat industry and all of that shit, but like bullying online and just being constantly connected to social media, those are things like we do not need. You know what I mean? I can make an argument I need meat because of the protein and stuff that it provides for me, right? But I don't need social media. I don't fucking need it, man. No one needs it. Like, is it entertainment and entertaining? Yes. But we don't fucking need it.
So it's interesting. My wife and I had this conversation quite a bit about it because we'll both notice when we're on each other's phones and each other's presence, and instead of talking to each other, we just killed an hour, you know, scrolling through Instagram. She's like, she has unfollowed virtually everyone on social media, and she's like, I just follow things that bring me joy, like accounts and like she's, you know, her interests. She only follows things like, because you're in charge of customizing your own experience on social media if you're going to be on it. So many people are on it and they feel bad about themselves because they see people doing things or physical appearances. Like, you don't have to subject yourself to feeling shitty. You could get off it, like you said, we don't need it, or you can customize it if you do want to be on it. So you're only seeing, she follows a lot of like parenting and like outdoor and, you know, photography things. I'm addicted. Like, what I would miss most about social media, and I shit you not, this is 1,000% true. I fucking love seeing like people I went to school with from middle school and elementary school and high school. I just love seeing like what they look like now, what they're up to now. Like, it's just, if I could just log on once a month and see an updated picture of all the people I went to school with, that's the only time I would spend on Facebook. But I'm not willing to give that up.
Well, see, and then this is the thing. So you talk about your wife, all the things that bring her joy and stuff, and I get that. But within this social dilemma show that they tell you is, so they're sitting there and they see your wife looking at all that happy shit. And they're like, okay, let's continue to serve her happy shit, right? So within that happy shit, she's getting served ads. Now, great. For her mental state, she's just like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not looking at the garbage. The garbage isn't filling up my brain. But they're still winning in that situation because they're going to serve her what she wants to keep her engaged. So maybe she's looking at healthier stuff, but is there something like in my fucking beard right here? I keep seeing it. No? But they're going to keep serving her stuff and then they're going to keep her engaged. And that's part of the problem, right? Even if the stuff that you're consuming and viewing is positive, great. But they're going to continue to serve that. You continue to tune in so they can continue to sell ads to serve you. It's a great business model when you think about it. It's just shitty that we're like little mice within the maze that they're manipulating.
The internet is the single greatest invention in human history, arguably, but it's also like the single worst invention in human history.
Well, and you bring up a great point. That's what the guy said on the phone. He was like, hey, it's great that you can go on an app and a car can be there to pick you up anywhere on earth in 5 minutes. But then it's bad when someone leaves a mean comment for like the 7-year-old girl, right? Like, all of that happens within this same platform. Like, all the super positive stuff where people have been reunited and, you know, they've used it to find people or find pets or like we can go on and on, right? But equally, if probably not longer, is a list of negative shit.
It's like right now, and we don't have to go deep into this, but the internet has sowed this era of, we don't know what facts are anymore. Like, there's no like commonly held agreement on what is a truth. And so you can go on the internet and choose your own truth, right? You can choose your own truth on what science and what angle and what is real and what's not real. We see conspiracy theories flourishing because in the absence of truth, people create their own and everything becomes believable. And that would not exist to this extent if the internet did not exist. Disinformation has always existed, but it's not as contagious as it is now. That also, it creates a community for people who don't have a community in their real world or a community that they're happy with. So then they find, and it's like, why do we have this if we can't even agree like up is up and down is down?
Well, and you bring up, this is the other thing, man. It's like you've already watched Social Dilemma, although I know you haven't, is they talk about Pizzagate. And remember, that was one of those big conspiracy theories. And then they show a guy showing up at that pizza establishment and then them arresting him and they are on his back, cuffing him, and they go, why are you here? And he goes, to make sure that pedophile ring is stopped. And what they've said is, so if you're a conspiracy theorist, what they're going to do is they're going to recognize you as a conspiracy theorist. And what they're going to do is they're going to serve you all the conspiracy theorist shit you want, right? So now all of a sudden you're inundated with it when I think it's a rational thought of going, okay, shit, look at all this information I'm getting about this conspiracy theory. It has to be true. and it causes people to do what this guy did. And he got arrested. I don't know what happened with him. Like, I don't know if he faced charges, but the police right away, he goes pedophile ring, and you can hear the cops go, Pizzagate. Pizzagate. Like, they were all saying it because they all knew it. But that's how crazy, like, you're consuming something that can make you think fiction is fact because it's been served to you so frequently, your brain goes, fuck, I keep seeing this. It must be true, right? Like, if you keep seeing the sky's blue, you go, fuck, the sky's blue. That's how we learned about it, right? And if you walked outside one day and it was red, you'd be like, oh shit, I think it's supposed to be blue, right? But after 3 or 4 days, you're like, all of a sudden your brain's just made the automatic switch. It's red. And I think that's what's happening with us getting served all of this shit. And it's why you can talk about it for hours and hours and hours. So I just hope that people kind of smarten up and, be a little bit better. But that being said, I'm a big UFC fan. I think you watch some UFC, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So have you heard McGregor versus Dustin Poirier?
Yeah.
McGregor's agreed to January 23rd. He's come out and said he's agreed to the 23rd date, which he didn't. He wanted it earlier. But then he said, hey, we're going to have it in Texas Stadium. And Texas is one of the states that I believe they've allowed now Cowboys. Is it Cowboy Stadium or Texas Stadium?
AT&T Stadium.
AT&T
for the Dallas Cowboys, yeah.
For the Dallas. So they are allowed half the capacity, which I think is around 50,000 people.
Yep.
So that's obviously why McGregor wants it there. My whole point about all of this is, to book an event, and it's not booked yet at AT&T Stadium. It isn't. It's what he wants. But this dovetails into what we're going to talk about here in a second with Florida. Having 90,000 people and Nick Saban popping positive, which we will in a second. But, again, I believe it's premature to plan these things out. I know the UFC hasn't, and they're still doing Fight Island and stuff. It's a fight I want to see. I know the people want to see it. McGregor back in action. He signed to fight Pacquiao after the Dustin Poirier fight. So this is a good fight. He's got a lot on the line. I think it's going to be great. But do you think we're going to see... Now, this is January 23rd, so project it out, little Nostradamus on you here. Do you believe that the UFC will hold an event with fans as early as January 23rd?
100%, yeah. And I think that's Dana White's MO. I think we have to acknowledge that there is a large segment of the population that is willing to go out and be in large groups without masks, without social distancing. There, just like we talked about information, you can choose a set of information that tells you all of this is unnecessary. Go out and live your life. You're going to be fine. And there's people that really believe and subscribe to that. What I'm curious, I'm really curious. Let's say they say 50,000 people can attend. Do we think 50,000 people will buy tickets? Florida wanted to have 90,000 people in the college football game. Would 90,000 people have showed up? Like, I still don't think that people, I think 20, 30,000 maybe, but I still think most people would probably pass. So if they said 50K, how many people do you think actually show up?
In Texas, I believe 50,000 would show up. In Florida, I believe 90,000 people would show up. I think if in Arizona, if they said, hey, you can have 50,000 people at State Farm Field, I don't believe 50,000 people would show up. But I think, Texans, everything's a little bit different in Texas, right? Like, I'm sure they want Texas its own country if they could. So I think they have a little bit of an ego about themselves, which is fine. We all have it. I'm not talking down about them. I'm just saying I think they would be the people, the residents of a particular state to buy it. And then Florida, listen, anything I hear like fucking weird, I automatically assume it's Florida. You know what I mean? Like, so like the 90,000 people, when I heard that, the governor had approved that, it made sense to me. Do I agree with it? No, but it's Florida being Florida again, right? Despite the fact that Nick Saban, to some, a god coach in college football, tested positive for COVID. And I think, if you invite 90,000 people to a stand and they're elbow to elbow, right? And they're out at the concessions doing stuff. Come on, man. Are you telling me you don't think there's going to be positive COVID as a result of that?
Right.
There's no way you can tell me there isn't going to be. You got 90,000 people. Talk about 50,000 people. I think it's ridiculous.
I think it's ridiculous too. And it's a really interesting conversation of like, okay, let's say 90,000 people show up. Maybe it's, 30,000 college students, the young people, healthy people decide like, I'm willing to go out and do this. Inevitably, that 90K is going to spread to other people, however many cases there are. there are going to be a handful of people that almost certainly die as a result of connecting the dots back to that gathering. What I have a really hard time with, because, we've talked about it on air, off air before, like, how seriously, what do you do, what are you not doing? I don't judge people from living their life and choosing what they believe is best for them and their family and their earning potential and all that. But I think it's insane that some people have just decided that there's certain segments of our population that are expendable. Like if you're obese and you're unhealthy, you're at a greater risk. We know that. If you're older and you have underlying conditions like that, oh, you're 70 plus. Well, you're old. Who cares? Like my parents are in their 70s. They still work hard. They're still up every day. There's Nick Saban, 68 years old. And I just think the idea that I have to be somewhere with other people is more important than potentially preventing someone else from getting sick and potentially seriously ill is crazy to me. Like it's not necessary right now. We will figure this out eventually, but right now is not the time to play loose and fast with other people's livelihoods. I mean, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, no, I think you put it in the exact manner is people are putting their desire to be entertained above other people's health. And
yeah,
I mean, we could debate for days, the complexity of COVID and, exactly what it does or whatever. But I think the consensus is no one really fucking knows. So when you're dealing with something you don't really know, it's kind of baffling to me that people would kind of flaunt their nose at it, like, now listen, I'll go on record as saying this. We know the CDC has said that the amount of deaths related to COVID wasn't the number that they actually recorded because some people were passing away of conditions that weren't related to COVID. But even with that being said, people have passed away from COVID. So that's a fact, right? And even if one person has passed away from COVID, I think that's enough for me not to attend a football game.
Yeah.
Call me crazy, but that's the way I view it. Like if you can save one person, even if only one person has passed away because of it, that in and of itself should be enough. But the fact that we have had thousands of people across the country and or nation pass away, to me, that's enough for anybody to take this seriously. Now, what taking it seriously means will vary from person to person, but we should still all be implementing something because I think if we did, we'd probably be in a better position. But it's like anything in this great world we live in, we get a lot of freedoms, but with those freedoms is the fact that your neighbor has all the freedom in the world too to do whatever he or she wants to do. And I think it's a little sad that what's it turned into. I love your point. Listen, and I'm the same way. Do whatever you want to do, man. Just don't push your agenda on me. I'll do whatever. I'm cool, man, with everything. How you run your life is 100% your business. But when you run your life in a manner that could negatively impact my family, my ability to provide for my family, that's kind of where I start to have an opinion about things because your life is affecting mine. You keep your life away from my life, I got no issues, man. But your decisions start negatively impacting me, then I'm going to raise my voice.
It kind of goes back to our last conversation. I think we used to have this idea like a general consensus of what reasonable behavior is. Like I would think if you have 20,000 people in attendance at a 100,000 person stadium, that's reasonable. It's outdoors. There's plenty of space. You don't have to be on top of each other. That's reasonable to me. Is it perfect? Is it ideal? Probably not. I mean, we could probably wait till next year, but it's reasonable to think you can sell some tickets. You can social distance. You're outside. It's fine. We don't have any consensus on what reasonable is. Like some people view that as, tyrannical, that you would limit my choices to attend. And it's like, that's why we're kind of as fucked as we've been for so long is no one is willing to accept reasonable as a thing, It's not about you, It's about the collective, but.
Right. When we talk about being reasonable, we got I always say that wrong. Le'Veon Bell, right?
Yep, Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell. So, man, was it reasonable to sit out? Man, he ended up really sitting out almost, if you count up the games and everything, I think it came to about 2 years. Jets released him after he got the contract he wanted, which was, he got 21 mil from the Jets or 24 mil?
27 and a half guaranteed.
Okay, and then they're still on the hook for 6 mil.
Yeah.
Why do you think they were unable to trade him?
Running backs don't really matter in the NFL as much anymore, which I know is crazy to say because a bunch of running backs just got a bunch of huge contracts, but generally he's on the wrong side age-wise. He's a little older. Last year, he averaged just over 3 yards per carry. He was not good at all last year, all season. Was injured to start this year, came back and has played 2 games. But he's just, I mean, listen, there's the Carolina Panthers signed Christian McCaffrey, who everyone considered to be the best running back in football by a wide margin, to this huge contract, right? Huge contract. He gets it. He gets injured this year. This dude steps in, Mike Davis, who nobody's heard of. Mike Davis, they've won 3 games in a row with Mike Davis as the running back, putting up the same numbers that Christian McCaffrey did. And now it's like, my God, we're paying Christian McCaffrey how many millions of dollars, and we're just as good without him as we are with him. So what's crazy is
that made me think. Sorry to interrupt, but that makes me
Yeah.
think the success of running backs has tied a lot to the O-line.
Yeah, it is. And it's also like there's so many running backs, it's supply and demand. Like every college team has to start a running back. So you've got every year, you've got dozens of NFL caliber running backs that can enter the league. There's, teams now have 2 or 3 that they're using. It's just, there's such a supply and the demand isn't there. And the difference between the great ones and everyone else isn't as pronounced as the difference between a great quarterback and a pretty good quarterback. So it's not shocking. I think he's still got something left in the tank. I think he can still be good. I think he'll still help, but he's not great. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's down to when this posts, Le'Veon Bell will already have made his decision.
Yeah.
We're filming this Thursday, October 15th. He, by all accounts, is supposed to make his decision today. We know from all reports, it's down to 3 teams: Chiefs, Dolphins, Bills. What one of those 3 teams do you believe he can contribute to the most?
I mean, it's hard not to pick the Chiefs, right? I mean, listen, he's like, I was describing it this way: the Jets are the worst team in football, and he gets released. It's like being released from prison and stepping immediately onto a private jet to a tropical paradise where you've got 5-star resorts. Like that's the difference between the Chiefs and the Jets. So if you had a chance to go play for a Super Bowl with the most exciting offense in the league, now the difference is he's not going to be the guy there. Like they have a rookie first-round pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that is their number 1 running back. If they're going to sign him, it's as like a co-running back. He could go to the Dolphins and be the guy. He could be the number 1 guy for a not very good Dolphins team. But if you choose that path, he could rebuild his market value more effectively to where maybe he gets a bigger deal next offseason than he thought. But I would go Chiefs. I mean, how could you not?
I would go Chiefs, man. Like hanging out on the sidelines with Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Those guys look like they're always having a good time. The energy's there. Andy Reid's there. I mean, and listen, like, again, when I think of the NHL compared to the NFL, I think a lot of NFL players might make the choice that you just indicated. Go to the Dolphins, build yourself up. What's best for Le'Veon Bell maybe is what you just said. Maybe it signs with the Dolphins and stuff. But see, I'm Canadian. I'm a hockey guy at heart. And any hockey player will tell you that they're going to go with the team that gives them the best chance to win the cup, and it has nothing to do about money. And I'm always going to respect that. I know I keep saying shit about hockey players different from others, but it's because it's near and dear to my heart. And I really do believe, if you're in a sport and you want to be a champion, then you should go for the championship. Like, don't talk all this other shit about championship if you choose the Dolphins. There's no way on God's green earth the Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl. I'll go on record as saying in the next 5 years. It's probably even longer. But out of those, the Bills, you might have a chance with the Bills. Aren't the Bills 4-0, 5-0, or 4-1?
4-1 now. 4-1. Yeah.
4-1. They're doing fucking good, man. Like,
Yeah.
look at you go to the Bills. I still think you're on it, but I'd like to see him compete for a championship. And I think the consensus, most is you're going to probably end up with the Chiefs. They're the reigning champs. They kept everyone basically together that was the stable of that championship. So if I'm him, I want to go over there. And that's the other great thing. The Jets are still on the hook for $6 million. So the teams he gets to sign with, he kind of has a lot of extra freedom.
The only curveball I threw there, I agree 100%. If he wanted to compete for championships in the first place, he would have never signed with the Jets as a free agent, right? Like, so clearly money's more important to him.
Great point.
But the other thing is, if he signs with the Bills or the Dolphins, he gets to play the Jets this season. So if he's on the Dolphins or the Bills, he can run it down their throat and show the Jets, like he and the head coach bumped heads for 2 years. And that would be kind of the ultimate middle finger is like, I'm going to put up 200 yards on you. And even if I'm only winning 6 games this year, at least I got to beat the shit out of my old team. So the Bills might be like the happy balance between both. Good team in the division. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. So from Le'Veon Bell over to Tommy Pham of the San Diego Padres. He was outside a strip club, asked some guys to get away from his car, and he ended up getting stabbed. There was also a little bit of a commotion, but he got, I say stabbed, it was really a slash. It was 12 inches long, 5 inches wide, and when paramedics showed up, they had to stitch him up. It always amazes me, and we're going to talk about Melvin Gordon too, because he got pinched for a DUI last night or maybe the day before. But I just don't understand why these guys keep putting themselves in this situation. Like, I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that going to a strip club probably isn't the best idea. Right. And especially when you're a celebrity and famous. I mean, listen, it's not the place that you should be when you're a professional baseball player, in my mind. And then you're walking out of the nightclub. When I was younger, I went to nightclubs, and I might have been in a few fights. And fights most of the time happened when everybody was let out of the bar, you know, because everybody's drunk, everyone's in front, and someone bumps into someone, and all of a sudden, you know, you're having a dust-up. And that's what I mean about these situations is, unfortunately, these guys need to make better decisions. Obviously, it's unfortunate he was stabbed. He shouldn't have been stabbed. I'm not condoning him getting stabbed. All I'm just saying is, when you're at that level, why jeopardize your ability to provide for generations of your family by going to a strip club and staying out until 2 or 3 in the morning to get slapped? It makes no sense to me.
Now, all of that, it makes 100% sense. Add on top of that, it's during a global pandemic. So now you're going to a strip club as an athlete, and it's like, what is it, a lap dance behind plexiglass? Like, what? There's no contact, I'm assuming. So you're better off just staying at home anyways and firing up, you know, your laptop or whatever. And then you've got the Melvin Gordon thing's crazy to me. It's because, like, what are you going out and drinking for and putting yourself in that position? Again, it's a pandemic. Every reason the NFL right now is struggling to keep its schedule and its season afloat. And you're out boozing with friends, and then you get a DUI and a speeding ticket. So now you got to go get down to the jail and get processed. Now you're coming into contact with God knows how many other people. And we're trying to, you know, keep things clamped down in the NFL. So, yeah, I don't get it. Neither one of them makes sense. And Tommy Pham, like you said, I'm glad he's going to be okay. But, man, like, just wait a little while before you go back out to the strip club and you know.
Make better decisions, man.
Yeah.
You know, and then with Melvin Gordon, I'm just reading, he was going 71 miles an hour in a 35 mile an hour zone, drunk. And this is the thing that always baffles me. So I have a buddy who played in the NHL, and he was one of the better players within the NHL. I won't name him. But what he had whenever he went out, and whether it was with the boys or by himself, he had a driver. He was a guy drove to his house. He didn't have a driver every day, but if he went out, this guy would drive to his house and drive his car around, and they paid him $25 an hour. Okay, so let's say you go out for 8 hours. That's $200. Let's say you throw on a C note for the driver as a tip, $300. I'm pretty sure Melvin Gordon has $300.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with Tommy Pham. Like, why? Hey, if you want to go out, why don't you hire a bodyguard?
Yeah.
You could get a bodyguard for $200-$300 a night too. It baffles me that these guys have these things available to them. You have agents, you have managers. Maybe these managers and agents are telling them these things and they're just not listening. But it just baffles me. If you're going to drink and go out, why not have a driver? I think that'd be fucking badass. I'd have a driver drive me everywhere. So I wouldn't have to drive because other drivers suck. So like you have the means to be able to pay someone to drive you around, make sure you're safe, and you don't do it. Like it baffles me.
It's also $300 is a lot cheaper than whatever fine he's going to pay for getting a DUI and a reckless driving or whatever he got.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying $300 isn't a lot of money. I'm just saying $300 isn't a lot of money when you're a professional athlete making millions of dollars and you talk about the DUI, it's going to cost him 5 to 10 G's just for his lawyer, plus probably another 5 G's just for all the fines. And then you talk about, is he going to face a suspension? Is he going to lose some of his salary? Is the team going to fine him on top of whatever he gets from court? Come on, man. Now all of a sudden you're 15, 20 G's deep over $300. Do the fucking math. It's an easy decision.
No brainer. No brainer.
Yeah. We'll leave it on that high note, that angry note. But thanks for tuning in to Sports Talk, Law Talk. Jody and I appreciate it. Go to YouTube, subscribe, check out Instagram, all the other social platforms. Maybe stay off a little. Just be careful. Just be careful, guys and gals. Hey, we appreciate you. Thank you very much.